All right, welcome back. As always, I am Andrew Moore. The guy below me in the green hoodie is Doug Nelson. The guy in the Under Armour tee is Justin Thornley, and the guy beside me is probably a stranger to most folks because he hasn't been on camera in about a year and a half. That is Ken Brown making his illustrious return tonight with us. So we're happy to have him back. Today, we wanted to take some time to kind of touch on expectations versus reality for first-time Western elk hunters. It's application and draw season for a lot of Western states, and as East Coast guys, we kind of wanted to give our firsthand experience of what we expected the hunts to be like versus what they actually were. So, I want to kick things off right there.
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing to me was I figured I know our area was a little different, but I thought it'd be a lot more long distance glassing, like seeing herds long distance. And I mean, I know that exists some places more the higher elevations, but I just expected to be glassing the majority of the day and then putting
Hmm.
stalks on instead of like tight cover. Most of the day with the pressure, they were just tight cover, bottom of canyons, all places you can't just peek into. There's nowhere to glass from. The only real good glassing that we did was mule deer glassing, really. Um, I mean, the little bit of elk glassing we did was from pressure, guys
Right.
pushing them down, but it wasn't really natural movements or large herds, you know. I think that surprised me the most. I think I was a little, I had my expectations a little bit higher for the physical demands of it. You can really pace yourself and still cover a lot of ground, so the average guy can do it. It's not something you have to be a super athlete to do. I was expecting to really be, not that it wasn't exhausted, but I mean, you have to be better than whitetail shape, but not, you know, marathon shape. I guess that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we live at what, like 1,200 feet, and out where we hunt in Colorado, we're at about 8,600. So just
Yeah.
hearing those
So,
numbers, you think it's gonna just kill your ass. But if you're in decent
yeah.
shape, you're fine.
Yeah, I thought we'd be sucking wind and just exhausted. I mean, there was at the end of the day times where we were, tired and you put in long days or drop into deep canyons, but it's manageable. You just have to pace yourself. You can't. But I was thinking it was going to be too much, for the first time with the elevation and everything. But it's definitely manageable for most people. It really is. If
Right.
that's something that's holding you back, like, you could do it getting into a little bit better shape than you are, and it's achievable. Now packing out, that's when separate the men from the boys. But other than that, it's a one day, one time thing, and adrenaline kind of carries you.
That's a problem you're happy to have.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, the adrenaline and the excitement carries you for at least part of it. Maybe the first year, correct?
Yeah.
But it's after that it can get a little daunting. But the heat surprised me as well. I think I was expecting a little more unpredictable weather, which we did have last year. It did snow, and it
Yeah.
was like the Pacific Northwest for crying out loud. It rained and snowed, but most of our trips has been warm. It's actually for us being East Coast, we're always prepping for the warm, to be warm at the cold weather, not so much to prepare for the warm weather, overhydrating and stuff. That's just not something we've ever had to do. I've never been in a wood situation before Colorado where I had to force hydrate and,
Hmm.
force eat. It's really tough to eat out there when it's 80 degrees.
And you're
But
putting 3 miles a day or four
yeah,
miles a
no,
day. It's
yeah,
tough.
yeah. I mean, it just depends on how your setup is, but you really got to. I mean, I remember the first year, Andrew, you lost a lot of weight. It's just you count calories and you bring the calories, but to put them all down in a day's time is tough when it's nasty hot.
Oh yeah. You pre-plan all your food for each day. You have like 3,500 calories in a bag ready to go. But yeah, unless
Yes,
you're really sitting around doing nothing, it's hard to force yourself to eat.
yeah. I mean, and the hotter it gets, the harder it is, and you feel it. I mean, you feel the fatigue when you don't eat. I mean, some days it's hard to put down 2,000 calories, and you're definitely burning, way more than your average. So yeah, you need to push 3,000 calories
I don't
easy to.
usually, I don't usually have a hard time forcing the food out there, but I think the key to it is making sure that you pack stuff that you like to eat.
Yeah,
I'll throw in a Snickers bar in for each day,
yeah,
get
you
it right
gotta have a treat.
off. So yeah, as long as it's something that you like.
I
Just
agree. I mean, I never had a problem eating my treat bags. I do the Skittles and Twizzlers and the quick sugars to pick you up. But
right.
the days you want to eat that high calorie shit, that's the stuff that's the hardest. Like, I did that. What is it? Oatmeal mix or like grain mix or whatever. Just for some days, it's just like I don't want to eat
Yeah.
this shit. But
That's
it's
fussing around too.
yeah, well, it's calorie dense, and it's good calories, not shitty it's not sugarish. So
Pop tarts, baby.
yeah, I mean, Pop Tarts are great. They're freaking terrible for you, but when they're packing,
Terrible.
over 200 calories, and that'll get you up and going in the morning. It really will. Yeah, I mean, it burns off quick. That's the problem. You want that dense
Yeah.
stuff, and it's hard to carry super nutritious food because that stuff's heavy. I can't pack a bunch of apples and fruits and veggies because it's just not feasible.
Right.
It's all that processed kind of stuff. But I think that's kind of what surprised me the most. I mean, the fluctuation of the amount of elk we see is different by year. I mean, that just depends on hunter pressure and
Well, that's just it. That first year you and Andrew went out, you guys saw elk pretty much everywhere those first few
yeah,
days.
Mhm.
yeah,
And the last two trips we've had out there, we've struggled heavily to get on animals. I'm
yeah,
plenty of mule deer, like you said, plenty of mule deer every year, but getting on the elk has been tough. And there's a lot of pressure in that unit, which I get
yeah.
is why we're not seeing some of them, but it was tough.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that data, all the data you look is always a year behind at best. Most of the times, 2 years behind. And that lag in data is tough because you don't see it. So we won't see the real statistics on when we went last year till 2 years from now, and it's going to be tanked. But it's hard to plan being so far away, and you're trying to do your best due diligence, but the internet's a wild place. You can't trust people, and in
Right.
chat rooms and forums, and if you don't know people out there, it's just a unit can be shitty 2 years ago, would be great, the year you're going, but you might want to rule it out because of the data. But it's just, yeah. I mean, Andrew and I saw a bunch of first year, and I don't think conditions were much different. They were different this year, but not the year before, not the trip before
Right.
that. So I think it was all pressure wise. I think they just pushed them in. I guess the cattle farmers have a little bit to do with it, but I don't think a terrible amount. I think it's mostly just hunting pressure. I think the more secluded you are, the better. But all the data you read on that is with Onyx and everything else, people are getting out there, man. Like they're getting all these units. They're not afraid to go as far as they can go. They'll camp out 8 miles because they were trying to get away from people because you have that topographical data. You have that safety net to get you back. And you also can call for help if you need to get out or whatever. So it's a lot more people are venturing further from the road or trail.
That's one of the
So
things that surprises me the most is just being whitetail hunters. You're not used to dealing with so much pressure on the animals and livestock in the area and stuff like that. It's just such an adjustment to try and learn how to cooperate around those things.
yeah,
No,
we can go.
yeah.
You can go
Got
two
some life.
miles. We can go 2 miles out in PA, and you're not going to see a soul. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You might see one other guy.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, those electric bikes have changed things a little bit for us as far as like guys getting out because over the past few years I've had a stand. It's a 25-minute walk, but I've seen people the past couple of years always on bikes because they're not going to hoof it because it does. You got to get up earlier. You got to put way more prep into it. But if you can bike out there in 5 minutes, on these $3,000, $4,000 bikes, then yeah, why
Yeah.
not? There's always these old logging roads or trails that aren't that hard to traverse. So, the biking has changed, but it's still nowhere near like Colorado. Like we can drop into canyons, miles into canyons if people been there. You know people been there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we found that honey hole, that wallow. It's the first active wallow I've seen because we've always gone the first week. There's not too much, active wallowing. But I mean, there was mud on the grass. There was mud trails walking 30, 40 yards in each direction because they just were just stinking mud, dragging it out. So you're like, oh, this is active. I mean, we sat on it damn near whole day, nothing. So I don't know if somebody ran them out the week previous or they were bugling, but they were, I mean, just way down in canyons. So I don't know if they're coming out at night or that's just foreign to me. I don't know how to hunt a wall specifically, other than you just kind of set up and hope. But it's not like whitetail where you got to scrape and it's the rut, and they're gonna visit it. It's just a matter of when. But I guess it's no different there. If they're too heavily pressured, they're gonna abandon it.
I will say though, especially for us being archery hunters for elk, on the positive side, when you do see one and they're within range, it's far above any expectations you have.
Oh, yeah. I mean the challenge is what drives you. If we would have had a muzzleloader, we would have been tagged out almost every year. I mean, last year was probably the exception and was tough. We walked into bow range on a spike pole, but I mean, you can't do much about that. But running solo spike pole, it gets your heart going.
Hmm.
Oh
But I
yeah.
mean, the challenge is what it's about. I mean, if we could go out there 300-400 yards and do high country and just snipe one, it kind of loses value to me.
I'm with
I mean,
you.
Right.
there's skill to that because you still have to know how to shoot. You have to train to shoot at that distance. But yeah, I like that up close, man. Just thunder pumping. I mean, Doug remembers we walked up on a monster and no shot. I mean, wind at our backs. Like he was gonna wind us. He was inside some oak brush. Like it was just you just had to watch him. But I mean, if it was a muzzleloader or a rifle, I mean, he'd have been dead as a doornail. I would have thrown lead without hesitation. It's just you can't shoot through branches like that.
I think he said he shook for about an hour after that
Oh my
encounter.
God. I've never
Oh,
seen that's the biggest
this,
bull I've ever seen in my life.
it was still
Hunting.
sticking in the tent that night.
I couldn't get
That's
my
what you're doing in that sleeping bag.
I couldn't get my binoculars up. I had to have Doug look. I'm like, I mean, he turned his head and scratched his back with his hand. I was like, oh shit. And I mean, it was 35, 40 yards. I mean, it just nothing but brush cover. But muzzleloaders plow through. I mean, I think muzzleloaders are much better plowing through than rifles, in my opinion. In the years I've hunted whitetail, I've taken some iffy shots through brush with a rifle with no luck, but muzzleloader, man, it's for some reason they mow.
You're throwing mini cannonballs at him. That's why.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's I don't know if it's because it's so blunt and it slows it down, or the rifle's just the projectile small and fragile, compared to a big, heavy, hefty muzzleloader. But in Ohio, I shot a silhouette. I mean, I knew what it was, but it ran behind brush. It was just a silhouette of it. And I mean, I dropped that thing. Like, I can't believe I dropped that thing. Hey, you're right. I mean, you do it for the challenge and it's frustrating. I think your expectations vary. You know it's going to be challenging, but you expect to have an opportunity. I guess that's where it comes in is like in your head, you're always expecting opportunity. I'm like that in whitetail. Like I get up in the morning, I'm like, this is the day, the conditions are great, or I psych myself into thinking like this is the day. It makes your sits a little bit easier.
Yeah. Well, even when you're walking into a new spot, you're always looking, thinking, oh man, I can see one stepping out right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
This is you're envisioning the positive things you want to happen. Like this is, I mean, it never happens the way you want it to. Like that's a guarantee because you're like,
Yeah.
it's gonna come out this window. I'm gonna have a shot right here. The fucker will come straight at you. Or come from behind you. That's always the adjustments you have to make. And that's the other tough thing about archery is you're on the ground. It's a big animal, but they're skittish. Like that's the other thing.
Skittish.
That's the other thing I didn't envision about elk being that big. I didn't think they would be that skittish. I thought they would be a little more, I don't know, I guess
Uh,
less observant, not as, just kind of give you more opportunity. But no, I mean, they're constantly on edge, and that's a pressure factor as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's another thing that surprised me about them once we actually got into them is these things are 800 pounds in some cases, and they move like a mouse through the woods. They are
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
God,
stealthy and elusive. It's ridiculous.
it is
Nimble.
insane. You don't hear nothing ever.
Yeah. And they're so hard to pattern. I mean, where Andrew shot his bull, well, I had cows coming through that area on multiple occasions, and I kept moving where they were coming down. I mean, it was so predictable. They came down every morning at light. The guys were jumping them down, but it was a different fucking spot, and it was like 80 yards, So I move this, I move over here. Fucking no, now they're down here. I move over here. Now they're, back where I was the other day. It's like, and they had no clue that I was there. It wasn't me giving them away. It was just, that's what's so frustrating about bow hunting and great about it is you got to mix a little bit of luck into it. Because
Yeah.
I watched them for 20 minutes at 120 yards. Just what can you do? You got cows and you get a cow call. I mean, you can't really, it's hard to lure a cow in, maybe with a calf call, but they already had a calf with it. So it's just, you try your best, and otherwise you just get excited about seeing them.
Yeah.
It's so surreal just to watch them.
Yeah.
And, you try to do better next time. But it's like, I look back in retrospect, is all those honey holes we found, like little water holes and stuff, they always look great. Those are always the hardest hunted spots. You know what I mean? Like everybody's looking for those tiny little puddles
Oh yeah.
with a little bit of meadow around them. And I mean, they're everywhere. But
I mean, how many times you walk up on one of those wallows and that you had marked on the map, and all of a sudden somebody whistles at you.
yeah, or there's a half-made blind there, or
Trail camera.
trash.
Always
There's always but there's also tracks in there.
Right.
So I mean, are they running nocturnal? Because I mean, whitetail do that.
You smell it. You smell them.
Yeah.
And, the smell's there too. That they're there.
They're there. It's just, are they there during shooting hours?
Right.
It's hard to tell. I mean, I've done that with deer with cameras. You go in, they'll be in there 4 a.m. and you bump them out without a clue. And they don't even run out. They smell you or hear you, and they just walk out. But it's all darkness. So yeah, I think strategy wise, you see stuff that you see in the magazines and on websites, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the watering hole I've been looking for. But unless you're in the desert and water's rare, or sparse, like they got 70 other ones they can visit. So if that one's even remotely suspicious, and you're right, they might visit it, but maybe for less than a minute. They get a drink and then they bolt. And you can't hunt both sides of it. You got to play the wind. So that's the other factor. Sometimes they're going to come in the most cover, take a freaking drink, and beat feet.
And
now the wallows were different, I thought, but I said I didn't have any luck on that wallow.
And Justin, I mean, I don't remember hearing a ton of it, but like the guys calling, like I didn't see a ton of dudes calling out there, and the few that were, it didn't seem like it was doing anything answering back. And I mean, we had Andrew's uncle with us the one day that knew what he was doing. He got a couple of answers from down in that gully, but other than that, I didn't feel like it was like this big call fest out there either. Like,
Yeah, I did. I think that's the pressure again, because everybody and their brothers just bugling their fucking head off. I did have them answer probably most of the week. Towards the end of the week, it stopped, but it was always crack of daylight, dark. So if you want to have them bugle back, like darkness, you can hit it. It's going to echo farther, but it's also hard to locate them.
Right.
Because everybody knows when it's dark, everything echoes and the sound travels so far before the birds start chirping and the sun, before all that noise comes up. How do you locate them? You know what I mean? Unless you're dead familiar with the area or you've been through that before. we've had them and they were always down in the canyons. And what I think I figured out is they were just beating us to the bottom. You know, we try to get out there early and call, they bugle, but then by the time you get in, they're ahead of you and already dropped in.
Right.
You know, so you need to take the long bout way and get below them and then work them. I can honestly say it's probably like opposite of turkeys. Like turkeys always want to come uphill. They never want to come downhill. It's very hard to get a turkey to come downhill. Easy to get them to come uphill because they have that safety net. They can always bug out downhill. You know, they can fly down. But I feel like it was the opposite of elk. They were always at the tops at night, you know, 3, 4 in the morning. We heard it in the tents, bugling their freaking heads off. But by the time you get down in there, because they're so used to the pressure coming off these trails and roads, that they're just, as soon as the daylight hits, it's like a warning bell. They just drop into the thickest, nastiest shit they can find and just hold up there. You know, you got to come to them. And unfortunately, some of it's just areas you're never going to get one out of. You know, even if you get one, you got 2 days time, or you got to pay someone to horseback it out. So that's a gamble. You know, you got to take that. You say, well, do I want to push it that hard? You know, and how am I going to get it out? And that's the other factor. You have, when you're not from there, you have the resources to get one out if it's in that steep. Because I mean, these are like damn near vertical drops. And that's the other thing. You see elk trails and they're walking up and down. They're walking up and down like it's nothing. I mean, they got hooves, you know, we don't have that. You got gear on your back.
One of the things that surprised me is that some of these areas we were finding the sign that they were going into is like, holy shit, how the hell are they getting in and out of there, you know?
Right.
Look face.
Them fucking
Park Mountain go.
Right.
Yeah, those fucking ninja cows got down into some of that stuff. You know, these are what 600-800 pound fat ass cows,
right?
And I'm seeing tracks going. I'm like, how the fuck?
Yeah,
they're not like our cows. I mean, our cows would die in like 5 minutes out there. They would fall and break some shit because the cattle are just unreal to get down there. I mean, you could tell because they make a bigger mess going down. But
you want to talk about expectations versus reality. I mean, the number of cattle that you run into out there. Who the fuck ever expected that?
Right.
Well, Andrew and I got caught in a blowdown, and we blew out a bunch of cattle out of there. And I shit you not, them fuckers were jumping on logs. Their belly was hitting the logs. They were teetering to get their front feet down. Then I'm like,
they got a 4-wheel drive.
We're stuck. Andrew and I are stuck in this shit, like crawling. Like we're jumping and crawling. We're trying to stay on top of the logs, you know, like Ninja Warrior course,
right?
With all your shit. And these fuckers are just mounted. I mean, granted, they did run some shit over and smash some logs, but I've never seen a cow like belly over a log. I thought the damn thing was going to get stuck. I just watching it in amazement. And you know, elk move through there gracefully. You know, they can leap and jump, but some of the stuff, even when we saw a spike bull in the morning, we saw him drop low, so we kind of went out and around to drop lower, and I pinned it. We got to right below where he went through, and it was the nastiest shit. Even if we get through there, everybody and their brother is going to hear us.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, there was just no way to get through there quietly, even remotely quietly.
I remember setting up the first year out there, one of the first mornings, and all of a sudden hearing all this crashing going on and thinking that it was, actually we thought it was Andrew walking through the bush. Remember that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you expect something would pop out. Nothing ever came out. But then when we switched spots, and I was low in that meadow and you went up high, then that crashing came again, and those damn cattle all came jumping over logs.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they get in it too. I mean, I guess it's just what they're used to. I feel like my expectations change in that is like when you first see that stuff, you're like, there's no way there's elk in here. Right. Like they're too big. How do they get, like, I'm getting hung up on every branch. Yeah. And I'm irritated. I'm pissed. Like I have to jump up and down. But
your bow's getting caught on shit. Your pack's getting caught on shit.
And you're teetering everywhere. It's like, But that I think is exactly where they are because that is a giant safety net for them because they can hear you coming. I guess if I had to change it, I would get below them. But it's hard because you don't know the terrain. Once you're in it, you're screwed. It takes you an hour to get the
Right.
fuck back out.
Right.
Like unless you abandon it before going too deep, like once you get in it, most of the time you're stuck in it for a solid hour. I mean, we've all been there where like you get in a blowdown and those aspens are a nightmare. You know, they look pretty until you get in them and everything's just blown down. The root system out there must just be awful because everything just seems to fall over. But you know, you read the literature that's where they hide. Middle of the, I mean, but they claim it's middle of the day. You know, they stay cool in the heavy cover and they're protected. But I can't say I've ever been in there and found like a huge area of sign. You know, you'll see sign occasionally, but it's not like one spot with a whole shit ton of sign. All those water holes in those, you know, benches, you see a shit ton of sign. But I wonder if it's they're moving through there at night. I think. But you think if they were holed up in one area, you would just see piles of shit. But maybe they're just sleeping and chilling and they're not really creating much sign or creating much noise.
That's
So
one of the biggest things to me is you hear Colorado's got the biggest elk population in the country. You go out there, with these expectations, you're going to see 30, 40, 50 a day. And sometimes
yeah,
it's a struggle. I mean, you got to work to find them.
yeah. And like I said, I think you kind of go with the grain and what everybody's doing at first, you know, especially if your knowledge is limited. And I think that's detrimental to you because you just, you know, if you do the same roads, same trails, same entrances, you know, the elk learn it quickly and year after year, you know, it's the same. So, but it's also not easy like it is here to just go in a different way. You know, around here, if you're like, oh, I don't want to bust him, he's bedding here. You know, I learned my lesson. I can go all the way out and around. Well, in Colorado, all the way out and around is hours.
Right.
Mhm.
It
You
could be
know,
2 miles to get
yeah,
out and around.
yeah. I mean, 2 miles is under. It could be 6 or 7 because
Right.
try to get in that canyon
Right.
that I had elk bugling in on multiple occasions. You know, and the wallow was above where we were, but there was dry. I looked at the way around, and I think it was 6+ miles.
I'm sure.
You know,
One way.
to drop it, yeah, one way to
Right.
drop in quietly, come in the creek bottom. It's the only way you could get in there without blowing everything completely out.
Right.
And but you're right. What do? You start at 3 a.m. or you know you
Spike
start at
camp.
your normal time. I mean, you could spike camp, but you still got to get in there in the morning because midday they're not vocal. They're not going to travel. Like they're already herded up. They have their harem. The only thing you could pick off is maybe a satellite bull, but they're also satellite bulls aren't as vocal because of the pressure.
Right.
You know, it's just you got to get a little bit of luck and just catch that satellite bull slipping. You know, where he's lost a cow, can't find a cow, and you know you're the most appealing thing to him. Because I would get bugles back and forth. I mean, we would go back and forth for 15, 20 minutes, and I'd wait, move in, bugle again, bugle back, but they would not come out of wherever they were. So, like, you had to get to them without spooking them. But, like I said, the trains like this, the vegetation's thick as shit. And then you're crossing open areas just to get to that. So, you know, you try to stay on edges to break up your cover, but they're most likely either going to see you a mile away or hear you a mile away. So it's, yeah, I think that's challenging. And I don't know if high country is better. I mean, it seems better in my head, but like I said, your expectations always change because at least if you can visualize from a long ways, you can plan out your stock. But I mean, the terrain always looks different on your phone or the topos versus when you actually get in it. Because well, oh, I can go down this gully here, you know, pop up out of here, and then it's impassable. So then you got to work around, you know, without spooking them. I think that's the hardest challenge is rewiring your brain for that different terrain and that possibility that you're going to have to take days or hours to replan or to do different. And it's very hard to do different, even if you need to.
The biggest thing to me was you can pre-plan and read all these message boards, like you said, get on Rock Slide, read all the forums, read all the Bugle magazines you want. But there's
Yeah.
no substitute for actually being on the ground, getting firsthand experience with
Yeah.
learning stuff.
Right. Big time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say lower your expectations, but be realistic. I mean, it's
Right.
going to take years because years is, only a few days each year. You might get 7 days a year to scout, but also you can't scout thoroughly and hunt at the same time. Like you can stumble upon shit as you're hunting, but you're either full on, if you're trying to full on scout, you're just covering ground and looking for places and marking them, but that's hard to hunt at the same time because you're blowing everything out. If you're just plowing through areas, which I've done on certain days, it's like, fuck it, it's not working. We got to cover some ground and figure some shit out, but you only have a day or two time. You got to get back to actually hunting because, everything's crunchy. And so you can't just be willy nilly and through the woods and just flying around places if you're really trying to hunt. So
Right.
that it does take years to relearn. So I think if as long as you're open with yourself and be like, I got to learn and I got to waste a few years in order to learn and get better, then, and I think calling is, I mean, I want to be more proficient in calling, but I think that's probably the least thing I'm worried about. It's more of a like how to approach them and how to pattern them versus what we're used to.
Right.
Because we've never really been in a situation out there being so high pressure that we're really going to pull it in. You know what I mean? You got to close the distance. We're not going to pull one in from, half a mile. You got to be hundreds of yards. You got to really put the visual on for you to be able to pull it in. You got to close that distance, make them feel like you're real. You're not just going to sit somewhere and just like call one in. And I mean, turkey's like that. You can call and one will answer out, but you got to get in work. You got to get in close before it'll actually come to you. Very rarely, I don't know if ever I've had a turkey cover a large distance, even though I can get them to gobble at a large distance, especially at sunrise. You really have to close that distance, sometimes crawl. So I think it looks very more similar to turkey in that aspect than it is to whitetail. And I'm not a big whitetail caller. The only thing I call is to stop them, really. Unless they go blowing by, you might try to grunt them back. But I haven't been super successful in any of that kind of calling.
Well, I think what you said is exactly right. I mean, you can be optimistic, but I think you really need to set your expectations fairly low, especially for an initial trip out. Definitely an over-the-counter unit. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have a week where you don't see anything, or you can get stupid lucky and have one run right up to you like we did our first day. It's just,
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah. But I mean, it's luck in that aspect. It's not so
yeah.
much skill. I mean, you could have had all the skill in the world, could have the best pro caller in the world, but the amount of pressure, and there's guys bugling, above them, beside them. But even if you sound better, they got to be like, this is too much. It's danger. So I think it would change. Now, if we pull points and you get into like a 50% success rate unit, like you said, that's a very good point, Andrew. Over the counter, like quell your expectations. Like it's gonna be hard. You're fighting pressure. You're fighting dudes. Like, but now you get into 50% success rate point area. I think first of all, you need to be ready for that first. Like you need to put your time in over the counter or wherever else with the lower expectation. But to get out there, that's when you put extreme amount of work. Now, if we blow 4 points, I'm dropping in every freaking cannon that I hear one. Because I mean that's it. That's 4 years of putting in. That's a lot of money.
$500. Yep.
Yeah. Plus your success rate is a little bit higher. I think that drives you a little bit more. Because you drop 6 miles one way for nothing and they're already gone. Or, some guy's blown them out or spooked them, or it's midday, you're disappointed. But, you put that much time, effort, money into something, like you're gonna take it to that extra mile, which I think you should. Plus, you have less, you're in a better area. You've earned that time for a better area, which might be the only thing we can do here in the future with the over the counter being threatened. But
Right.
That was gonna be my next
Well,
point.
they always say that you'll never forget your first time. So I'm just glad I got to do it with all three of you.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had a bad time out there.
Everybody's struggling not to make a joke at that, Doug.
Yeah. Oh, he was
It
trying
was
for
a
it.
joke.
There
Yeah,
were a
he
lot in
was
my
trying.
head, but I kept them inside.
Yeah. But
I mean,
also,
everybody's shitty.
Had
And
my way
Greg
with
just...
all three of you.
well, you don't want to discourage people either. I've never had a bad time. Like,
No,
it's super cool driving out. It's a great guys trip. It's a great,
Oh,
great,
it's a great time.
it's a great breakup in the monotony. I mean, just driving out sucks and it's fun at the same time.
Right,
Oh
right.
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's exhausting, but it's also fun. You know, it's not
It
your
is.
normal day to day bullshit.
It's
It's
especially once you hit Denver, man. Like it
yeah,
just turns into a different trip at
Oh,
yeah.
Denver too. I feel
Your
like
your whole mood changes. You know what I
the
mean? Like
mountains start popping up, and you
yeah,
know you're close, and you know,
you
it's
stop.
so nice just to be unplugged for the
yeah,
week.
hmm
yeah,
Yeah, I tell people that's one of my
Being in that
favorite
country is
things
amazing.
is without noise pollution, you don't realize how fucking quiet things
right,
are. Like
right.
there's not humming or buzzing or something's not running. Like people are like, ah, that'd be weird. I'm like, nah, you sleep like a damn baby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Unless your tent mate uses a damn CPAP, then you don't sleep at
Hey,
all.
hey,
oh
Did you
shit.
run one this year?
hey! I never run one. It sounds like I got one going.
What's his name? Dave had one. He had a damn generator going
Solar
on.
charged CPAP. That's right.
Oh man.
He
That's
did.
the thing. That
He had the solar panels to his truck. I mean, he had
I
a
gotta
serious
sleep a little inclined, man. I gotta find a way to get my kata a little inclined there for me.
I mean, nothing wakes me up out there. I mean, you sleep better than ever, and just you wake up and you see mountains, shit. You see into different states. You know, it's a cool
Oh,
experience.
that's awesome.
It's never bad. You're out there getting exercise. You know, you're
The
in the
the
mountains.
the,
It's
the four-wheeler ride to your spot when it's starting to, you can start seeing the mountain formation,
yeah.
and the dusk is, you know, kind of the sun's starting to come up a little bit, starts to get a little light. That's like one of the best feelings to me.
Oh
Like
my
just
god, yeah,
that's just the best. Like you're just,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, you're going out to hunt elk, number one, so you're excited for that. Your
Yeah.
days, you're it's a new day, you're full of hope. You get all
yeah.
these gorgeous views. I mean, sometimes we're stopping and taking pictures because the views are so amazing. That to me is like one of the best parts about it. So it's just
I,
that morning ride to your spot.
Yeah, I think coming home is one of my favorites. You get out and the sun starts setting, you get all the
Yeah,
colors. I'm pulling over. You know, I take the same damn pictures, I feel like
yeah.
every year,
Every year,
but they're
yeah.
still cool as shit to
Right,
me.
right, right.
You know, it's just and then every time you're dropping in a new canyon or something, you're always pausing and being like, this is fucking cool. Like
Yeah.
it's you know, there's just mountains and valleys
Yeah.
everywhere. You never know what's in the bottom and
Right.
yeah, it's worth it. I mean, you know, it's never feels like a waste to me. I don't feel like, you know, I took a even our last trip was probably our worst one, you know, and I just don't think it's ever a bad time. You know, I would like
Right.
things to change differently, but I still enjoy myself and
Yeah.
you know, I'm happy to be here.
100%.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I haven't seen an elk in the last two trips, but I would go tomorrow if you asked me.
Oh yeah. Hands down. I mean, just to see the different stuff. I mean, I see grouse, I get freaking excited for crying out loud. You know,
We had a lot of grouse this year.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I saw some hammer mule deers. I mean, I know why it's a high end mule deer area because I mean, I've seen the biggest mule deer in my life out there, and
Right.
bigger than some of the shit in the magazines. You're like, geez, it's so surreal at first.
Right.
It's cool, but yeah, I think you pay your dues, you get your chops in, you learn and learn by mistake. And, you know, I tried to teach my son that with whitetail hunting. You're gonna make mistakes. It's frustrating, but enjoy the process. Because the more
Right.
mistakes you make, you know, and the harder mistakes you make, the more you learn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just make sure you learn from them. That's
Yeah.
the big.
Yeah. You know what I mean? The shittier mistakes and the ones you really hate are the biggest learning experiences. Like you bust one out, you sneak one, like the next time, that's the first thing that pops in your head. You know, I don't know, I assume we all have jumped deer or spooked deer, you know, trying to draw back or even a rifle, just trying to get the rifle up. Like you get too excited and you rush it So,
Mm-hmm.
the one time that happens on a nice buck, it's burned into your brain like, don't fucking do that. Don't move too quick. Like, be
Right.
smart about this, be methodical, slow your shit down. It's very hard to be methodical when you're excited, and
Right.
to be calculated. It's very hard. And especially you've been sitting all day, you ain't seen shit. And finally that opportunity arises and you leap up and then fuck gone. Like that's you
Yeah.
learn an experience you don't. And it's just like us. I learned more that as we're dropping to the top of the canyons, the elk always seem to be ahead of us. The more I got in there in the dark, at light, I would see them, but they're always moving down. They're dropping off, and it's like, well, shit, and I should come in from the bottom, but I can't get to the bottom. But now, I'll research more and I'll work more and get to areas where I can work in bottoms a little bit better, and I'll hunt
Right.
those areas a little bit harder versus all these areas we're seeing constant sign that are too easy to access, which is driving them out or making them only nocturnal.
Right.
It got to concentrate on more of a not the high sign areas necessarily. If it's high pressure, easy access, high sign area, it's like you kind of got to ignore the sign, which is super hard to do. Because if you
Oh,
see,
yeah.
yeah, if you're seeing shit everywhere and tracks everywhere, it's like, God, they're in here. Why? So you just push it, but it's like you're not getting that. You got to get to these areas where you feel like nobody's going to be,
Right.
or they're not going to be, but it's most likely where they're going to freaking be because they ain't trying to die, and they've learned over years and years like I gotta be in this shithole to survive.
Right.
Unless you're first day, first week, maybe not, but after that, you really got to change your game plan. I feel like. I mean, I think we need to concentrate more on being able to be spike camp and be super mobile. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, everybody wants to go back to main camp and hang out. I mean, that's super fun, but if you really want to kill, like I said, we put the points in, like I'm going full mobile, I'm lightening everything up. I'm taking gear in case I gotta spend the night. If you get in them or get on something that's promising, just drop it right there. Wake up and you're hunting. So yeah, I advise it to everyone. Um, Kind of quell your expectations a little bit. Use everything as a learning experience. And if you're not a Westerner, like it takes a while. Like, it's not whitetail hunting
No, not at all.
at all. I would compare it more to turkey hunting than whitetail hunting any day of the week. Like, turkey, you can have piles of shit everywhere, but it ain't going to mean they're coming back there. Or, you're going to see them there again. You kind of got to move with them, with the vocals and with the sound, even if it's limited. You got to put the work in.
Yeah, I think to wrap things up on this, just to echo what you said, if anyone's on the fence, just go. You're never gonna
Yeah.
regret taking that time or that
No.
Yeah.
week or two to go out and just get your feet on the ground, firsthand knowledge and experience, and learn from your mistakes and learn what you don't know. And anything's gonna help you for future use.
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean, the older you get, I think it's better to do that kind of stuff because you stop learning and you stop challenging yourself. And, that kind of stuff, it really invigorates you. It makes you want to do more and learn more and be better and try new things. And, who knows where it'll get us next? Next thing you know, might be in Canada or floating down a river somewhere in Alaska. It's just,
That's the hope.
yeah,
That's
I'm
the
not afraid
dream.
to. I'm not afraid to try. The more we venture out and try these new challenging things, and the more we're successful, the more I want to try,
oh, absolutely.
and the further I want to push it. So, I mean, yeah, because it's achievable. It feels achievable each time you do a little, different. It's achievable. You push yourself a little harder, get a little rougher. You're like, this ain't that bad.
Right.
All right. Well, I think that's about pretty good coverage for us tonight for us guys.
Yeah,
So hopefully this is helpful to someone. If, like I said, if you're on the fence, just go, and we will see you guys soon.
yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks again.
Enjoy the hunt.